Welcome to the Sports Talk ATL podcast. We're back after our 1 week hiatus, and I'm here with my co-host Chase Earl, and we've got a lot to talk about. 2 weeks to cover, so let's get right into it. Chase, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back talking about sports.
It does feel good. It does feel good. Well, obviously the elephant in the room here, biggest thing we have to talk about since last time we had this podcast is Hawks signed Dwight Howard. I mean, that's a big deal. That's probably the biggest free agency signing we've had
Yeah.
in recent memory as an Atlanta Hawks fan.
I mean, whether it's a good signing or a bad signing, still obviously yet to be determined. But it's a big deal. I mean, this is a media frenzy that's going to be around this guy, and I'm excited to see what happens. I'm really happy to have Dwight on the team. We've been going after him. It seems like for years, and like he struggled, last year in Houston, but I really expect that to change. I mean, every other season he's been a dominant force on the glass, on defense, and even a good scorer. I mean, he doesn't have a great post game, but he's so big it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, my thing about Dwight Howard and scoring is I just think Atlanta's such a good situation for him. That team just moving the ball everywhere. I feel like he's going to get so many more just easy looks than he did in Houston. I know that a common misconception is that Dwight didn't get his touches in Houston. He did get his touches in Houston. They were just bad touches. I mean, this team, you've seen it with Paul Millsap. Most of his buckets have just been easy buckets, honestly. And it's going to be the same thing with Dwight. And you were talking about it with me a second ago before we got started here. The two of them together, like that could be the best front court in the NBA.
I think
And if it's not, then it's by far the best defensive front court. That's a given.
Yeah, I mean, Dwight's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. There's questions whether he's still that defensive force. I think those questions are let's be honest. He was disinterested his last season in Houston. I mean, he wasn't getting the touches. He was getting like 8 shots a game. He was watching James Harden dribble the ball around. I mean, why would you put your all into a team like that? And I know that sounds kind of bad to say, and a great character guy should always be playing hard, but I think Dwight's going to be motivated here in Atlanta. I mean, he's going to be the guy. And what I'm excited to see is Atlanta play that inside-out type of game that Orlando demonstrated, where, like, we can get the ball into Dwight, into Paul, and get it outside, create more spacing, and get it outside to those shooters for open shots. And Dwight, doesn't matter if his offensive game is just terrible. If you put him one-on-one, he can go up there and power his way to the basket. And that's the same thing with Millsap. So I think they're going to be able to score the two of them close to 40 points a game.
Yeah, I think that's pretty realistic. I think that Dwight is going to score a lot. Excuse me. I think Dwight's going to score a lot more for this team than he did in Houston. He didn't have a great offensive year for them, but he still did have a great defensive year. He still rebounded 12 rebounds per game. I mean, that's still exactly what the Hawks need. They need a rebound. I mean, they were pathetic on the boards last year. Cleveland exposed them. And we'll get into Al Horford in a few minutes here, but I do think a lot of people in Atlanta don't think this. I think Dwight Howard's an upgrade over Al Horford at the end of the day. I think we upgraded at that position. He's one of the few guys in this league who's your traditional go get the ball and rebound it, post up down low. This league is trying to play European brand of basketball really now, going out and shooting the three. We saw Al Horford expand his game last year, add the 3-point to his repertoire. But one thing I noticed about that was he was just playing out on the perimeter all the time, and we suffer on the boards. We need that presence down low that Dwight has, and he still offers that, whether his offensive game is there or not. But I still think he's going to put up good numbers.
I mean, I think this starting 5 with Schroeder and Howard is already a lot better than with Teague and Horford. I think Horford, we lost so much rebounding the ball that Dwight Howard and Paul Millsap are 2 of the best rebounders at their positions. So rebounding now, which we were the worst at, we're going to be one of the best teams at this year. And I think that's like an understated difference that people aren't talking about enough. And then another thing that I'm so happy to look to see is that Dennis Schroeder, Dwight Howard pick and roll. I mean, I think that's going to be absolutely devastating to defend. I mean, Dwight can still play above the rim, no matter if he's lost it. Like if he's lost 3 steps, he can still play above the rim better than most of the guys in the league. I mean, he's an athletic freak, and Dennis Schroeder is so fast, and he's only getting better. I can't wait to see them two run that pick and roll.
Well, the thing about Dwight is he's coming off a down year, playing in a bad situation with a bad back. Looks to be getting healthier now. He's surely more motivated in Atlanta. I mean, he's done so much to try to resurrect his image since he's been here. He's doing appearances everywhere. He's changed his number to represent the biblical symbolization of rebirth. I mean, he really wants to be loved in this city. He wants, I really do believe he wants to bring Atlanta to a championship. So I see that heart in Dwight. So I think he's misunderstood. But as I said, bad situation, bad back, and this guy still managed to be the 4th best rebounder in basketball last year.
Yeah, I mean he's a freak. He's going to be great on the boards. That's without question. I mean, no matter what this guy loses, he's going to be a great rebounder. I'm sorry. There's an alarm beeping. They're probably picking it up.
Is that your place or mine?
Is that mine? It's
Okay.
out. It was out in the star. It just turned off though. Anyways, what were we talking about? One second. Dwight as a rebounder. And then what was I going to say?
1 second.
Dwight's a great rebounder.
I literally just said a second ago.
I got it. Dwight's going to be a terrific rebounder for us. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the biggest question, surrounding Dwight is he going to make his free throws? We've been seeing the videos of him working with shooting coach to improve his free throws. It looks better. It looks like his form's changed, but it's just practice. So hopefully he can get those numbers up into at least the 60s. That would be huge. I mean, there's the change in the hack-a-shack rule that they just announced, but I mean, still teams can go after Dwight throughout the game and get him to the free throw line. So if he can knock down those free throws at least like a 60-65% clip, that becomes ineffective. So hopefully he can get just a little bit better at that. But that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest question mark for me. Other than that, I think Dwight, the signing is terrific. I think he's a better piece than Al Horford, and I think we can build around him. I mean, the only person in the last 10 years outside of the big 3 in the Boston Celtics to beat LeBron James, Dwight Howard. If we can get him playing anywhere near that level and surround him with a good unit, I think we have a good shot at maybe taking down the King.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another thing I love about the Dwight signing is I just thought it was a good contract. I think it was about $20 million a year or
3 years, 70. 3 for 70, like $23 million a year.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm just gonna scratch that, but I mean, you got Dwight on a 3-year deal. If it works out, you have him long enough to get his bird years. Talk about bringing him back, and if it doesn't work out, you can try to move that contract. Like another team might take a chance on him, and it's only 3 years. It's a risk worth taking. And I still think that Dwight Howard is a star, and I think that he's misunderstood. And at this point in his career, I think he's honestly underrated.
Yeah, I think at this point in this, really, he's definitely underrated. And I think he's, without a doubt, I would be shocked if he didn't put up better numbers than he did last year in Houston. I think he's going to put up much better numbers, at least 17 points a game and at least around 12 rebounds. I think he's going to get back to the old Dwight and hopefully resurrect those Orlando days and prove the haters wrong, because I'd love to see it. I mean, there sure are a lot of haters, even in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's truly a shame seeing some people of our own fan base taking a dump on Dwight. I mean, he's come home. He's the only superstar that's taken a chance on us, and God knows how long we can't take a chance on him. I mean, come on.
I know. I mean, it's like we finally get someone. We finally get a big name. We've been begging for it, and then we just crap on them. And we say, Al Horford's better than him, which I guess we can start talking about that. I just think that's blasphemy. I don't think Al Horford's ever been as good a player as Dwight. He's never – I mean, last year he was the only year he ever outscored Dwight Howard in his career. I mean, we weren't getting anywhere further than we were now with Al Horford. So I think the move to get Dwight and replace him with Al Horford was a good one.
I appreciate everything Al Horford did for the city, and he was a great piece for us for a long time. But at the end of the day, I always felt like he was a great fundamental player. You know, a lot of people kind of compared him to like a little mini Tim Duncan. You know, he's a big fundamental type player, but the difference between him and Duncan was always that Duncan had the physicality, and Horford just doesn't have that. He's been a liability on the boards the last few years. He's playing out of position. He should be a power forward, and I don't know what they're planning to do with him in Boston, but he's gonna be a liability on the glass for them. I mean, they're signing up for the same deal that the Hawks had last year, really, by bringing on Al Horford. I just don't think it makes them that much better a team.
Listen, the one thing I'm absolutely salivating for is to play Boston next year. I cannot wait for them to try to play Al Horford at center against Dwight Howard and Paul Millsap and watch them just get out-rebounded by 20 rebounds every time. I think right now Atlanta plays Boston in a series. They beat them just as bad as they did this offseason or last season.
Yeah. I know I should be more upset about Al Horford leaving, but I'm really just not. Like I'm happy we had Dwight. I said it all season long that I'd rather let Al Horford walk and bring in Dwight Howard or Hassan Whiteside. I got what I want. I'm thrilled. A lot of Hawks fans are sentimental and they're not, but I'm telling you, he's going to be such a better fit. I know a lot of people don't think he's a fit in the system because he can't shoot. Like, that's such a common misconception. He's going to be, God, so many easy looks for him. He's going to have such a great year.
The only thing I can say about Al Horford leaving, and Zach Lowe mentioned in his article on ESPN, is that bringing in Al Horford and signing him this year to that $26 million a year mark and pairing him along with Dwight Howard, I think right there you still have one of the most dominant front courts. Al Horford's able to move to the power forward, and which Al expressed interest in doing. I think that would have been a really good move for Atlanta. The problem with not signing out Horford this year is the max contract for Paul Millsap's going to be $9-10 million higher next year. So you're extending that max to Paul Millsap, who's going to be even older than Al Horford, and paying him like $35 million a year. So do you want to do that? And if you don't want to do that, is Paul Millsap going to stay with Atlanta? So you have big question marks heading into free agency next year. But if the Hawks can find a way to re-sign Paul Millsap at a reasonable deal, then I think this is a really good move for Atlanta.
Yeah, there's a little bit of talk about potential Millsap being traded for picks and assets if Horford came on board. So I hope that didn't kind of tick him off per se. You know, nobody really likes to hear their names in trade talks. We'll see. I mean, he can opt out after this year. Could be a little sticky situation there, honestly. But we'll see. I mean, the way the salary cap is spiking, every year is a mystery going into free agency, honestly. There's nothing you can really do about that. We also have to think about maxing out Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a question this offseason.
That's a legit possibility. Like, this is a kid who I think has a decent shot of being an all-star this year.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, the guards in the East, you know, there's a lot of good ones, but I think if Schroeder plays up to his ability, goes out there, averages 16 to 18 points a game and close to 8 assists, I mean, he's going to be up there for an all-star spot, and he's only 23. People are going to recognize that, and they're going to give him max money. I mean, he's a restricted free agent, so the Hawks can obviously match it, but if he has a big year this year, he's going to get paid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that the 76ers already are, like, you know, contemplating giving him the max next offseason. We're going to have to match it. We may not even have a choice. There's other teams that will want to pluck him from us. I mean, he's a very promising young guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting offseason next year, but We can talk about that next year. I don't want to think about that now. I think overall this group of guys is a tight-knit group of guys. I mean, we saw Kent Bazemore re-signed for the Hawks, 4 years, 70 mil, taking less money to come back to Atlanta. Dennis Schroeder, in his interview with the Summer League, was talking about how that's his boy. And I just think this team is really tight-knit, and I think that's why the loss of Al Horford was kind of surprising. You know, he basically took the same amount of money to go to Boston.
Yeah, and I
So
mean, I also heard that Kyle Korver was working with. I feel like it was maybe one of the guards on the Celtics or something,
yeah,
training with him, and he said to him that yeah, Al Horford, Al's gonna come back, and then he texted him a couple of days later, and Kyle's like, yeah, things are changing, like he's kind of changed his mind, So I think going into free agency, Al wanted to be a Hawk, and then I think he just fell in love with Boston. Honestly, I think all the years of the Hawks being mediocre, and he's seen Boston hosting championship trophies. I think he realizes this is his last chance to get paid, and this is the end of his prime. And I think he made the wrong move personally. And I think the Hawks is a better situation for him, but I think it's a blessing in disguise for us. Honestly, Dwight Howard is what this team needs, 100%.
yeah, hopefully. But let's talk a little bit about that Kent Bazemore re-signing. What do you, $17.5 million a year? I mean, that's a lot of money, but the Hawks went and gave it to him, and I don't know how to feel about this move. I mean, it's like I think Kent Bazemore is going to keep progressing. Like I don't think he's like a Damari Carroll. I felt like Damari Carroll had kind of hit his limit. Like he was a great defender, could shoot the three, but there was nothing really else there. I feel like Bazemore can keep getting better as a shooter. He's actually really athletic and a good finisher, good slasher. I think he can still improve on his first year as a starter, unlike Damari Carroll really could. So I kind of like this deal, but at the same time, that's a lot of money if he doesn't.
Yeah, initially I was not too thrilled with the move when I saw the money. Then I saw how the rest of free agency shook out, and honestly, that was kind of his market, anyways. But I think that if he wants to prove his worth, financially, he's gonna have to get more buckets. I think he's gonna have to really take a step up scoring for this Hawks team because we have a great front court, but we do lose some 3-point shooting with Jeff Teague and Al Horford, and Schroeder. He's probably gonna score some, but Korver's not getting any younger, and Bazemore was nothing special as a scorer next year, so he's gonna be the one that has to step up.
Yeah, I expect him to. I expect him to. I hope he can. I think he's going to continue to improve as a 3-point shooter. We saw him take a huge step in 3-point shooting as well as from the line. So I think that's going to keep improving. But I really think where he can take the next step is as a finisher. I think he can attack the basket more than he does. We saw him do that a lot more in the playoffs, and he was really effective. At times,
He's very explosive, and
yeah.
he's definitely one of the better defensive players in basketball too.
Oh yeah, I mean on defense he's terrific. I don't think we have to mention that. I think the biggest thing on defense is I hope the Hawks can find a way to move him back to his more natural shooting guard position because I think him on shooting guards is just he's one of the best defenders in the league.
He's not a guy who should be playing out of position because he doesn't rely on his offensive game. I mean, in my opinion, he's a top 25 defensive player in basketball, and he needs to be guarding people in his own position. I mean, shooting guard is where a lot of these teams get their majority of their points in this league, and having him D up their shooting guard instead of Kyle Korver, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what's going to happen when Taurean Prince is finally ready to become the starter, which might be sooner than you guys think. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
he was really good in summer league, and with Kyle Korver not like you mentioned not getting any younger, I mean, the Hawks might be pretty willing to throw him into the fire early and let him get his feet wet. I mean, I think this is a team with no matter who you put at that 3 position is going to be a playoff team, and I think the more experience Prince gets as like a starter, the better he's going to get. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Hawks like threw him into the fire early.
I wouldn't either. And he projected as a more NBA ready prospect. I think he's a pretty polished product. I mean, I don't know how much room for improvement he has. I think he's one of those guys who can step in year one and contribute, and I think he'll be able to contribute year 7 or 8 too. Do I think he's going to be a superstar, the next Kawhi Leonard? No, but I do think he can play that DeMarre Carroll like role. And if you can get a DeMarre Carroll type guy back, have Kent Bazemore take that next step, and have a fresh Korver off the bench, I mean that's pretty good production from the wing, you know.
I mean, I know it's just summer league, and I'm not going to sit here and say Prince is going to be the next star. But when we drafted him, I wasn't thrilled. I didn't really like the pick. It seemed like a reach, and I didn't see, like you said, much room for a ton of improvement. But what I saw in summer league was a lot different than I expected. I mean, he still has a lot of room to grow as a 3-point shooter. He's actually a lot better around the rim than I expected. A better finisher. He's athletic. He can rebound really well. And defensively, people were saying, he has the defensive traits, but he's not a great defender yet. He was a demon on defense. I mean, he was the he was great. And and he still has room to improve in his rotations and stuff. He made some mistakes there, but the physical attributes on defense are there for him to be a top flight NBA defender, and he's already a pretty good scorer.
Yeah. Yeah, what's impressive about that as well is, that trade didn't even go through until the Hawks were a couple games deep into the summer league, and he didn't really get to practice with the guys because he couldn't. So, um, you plug him into an actual system like Coach Bud has, let him practice with the team, and we've seen how friendly that three position is to guys that step up for the Hawks. I mean, he could only, he could be even better. I mean, I think he's a guy who could start year one and put up, like 14 and 7 every night. Like, I think he's already a pretty good player. I just don't think he's going to get that much better. I think he could definitely start year one.
Yeah, I mean, I think
he's already like 20, 22, 23. I mean, this isn't like some 18-year-old who's going to come in the league and have 7 years to his prime.
I think the biggest question mark right now, even though he's a pretty good 3-point shooter in college, like around 36%, I think, for his career. I think the NBA 3, it's going to be a little tougher for him transitioning. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a really long transition. I think most guys can make it pretty well nowadays, but I think that's going to be a little tougher than expected. So I can't talk.
Jesus.
That's good. Like,
Yeah,
that's all.
let's move on to Jared Jack.
That's all I had to say about him.
All right. Well, we'll make that work. But let's move on to another topic here. Dwight Howard's not the only Atlantan that's coming back home. Jared Jack also signed a 1-year minimum deal with the Hawks, and I was surprised. That's a great move.
Yeah, I think this is a terrific move for Atlanta. I mean, for especially getting him on the veteran min, he is coming off a season-ending knee injury, but I think before the knee injury, he was averaging 13 points, 7.5 assists as a starter for the Nets. He's only shooting 40%. He's not the most efficient basketball player, but he doesn't turn the ball over. He can create shots for himself. He's a great playmaker. And off the bench, I mean, this is what the Hawks were looking for. They don't really have an NBA proven backup point guard. This is Jarrett Jack's a guy who, if Dennis Schroeder is struggling, can take over the reins and run the offense. He's done it time and time again, and I'm really excited to have him on the team. And he played at Georgia Tech. That's where he got his name from, leading them to a national title appearance. So it's excited to see him back in Atlanta. I think he's going to do really well. The biggest thing is I don't know if he's going to be ready for game 1 of the season. They said they're probably going to be rolling with Malcolm Delaney as the backup point guard, which is another guy the Hawks signed that we can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was a star over in Europe. He played for Virginia Tech, 2-year, $5 million deal. just a guy who we've seen guys the Hawks pluck guys from overseas and plug him in, and I think this is a guy who Jared Jack might only be here 1 year. I think he could be a step up from Shelvin Mack. I think he can be another pretty good backup point guard. And I just look at this Hawks team; they just look deep to me. I mean, I think Delaney was putting up. I think he was like the MVP in Europe last year, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was averaging like 16 points, 6 assists, or five and a half assists, something like that. I mean, he was a really good player, and I haven't obviously gotten a chance to see much of him. I mean, I've seen some tape, but he's a guy who can chuck up the long ball and make it at a consistent rate. That's something the Hawks obviously love out of most of their players. And I mean, he's an intriguing guy. I think he could be the backup point guard, as you said, after Jarrett Jack leaves, because that could just be a 1 year thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're both good signings. A lot of people were worried about the Hawks taking a big step down at the point guard position, but if Dennis Schroeder can really take those steps and be a good starting point guard this year, I mean, Jared Jack is your ideal backup in this league to me. He's got that veteran presence. He knows how to get it done. He's not going to make mistakes. If you need a change of pace, Jared Jack is just a great guy, great fit for the Hawks. I love that signing.
I completely agree with you. You know what it kind of reminds me of is the Warriors having like kind of a Sean Livingston off the bench. I mean, obviously Jarrett Jack's a better 3-point shooter than Livingston, but Jarrett Jack's the guy who can get into the paint, create his own shot, and he has a great mid-range game. So he reminds me a lot of Sean Livingston out for Golden State, and
Well,
I think
if you think about it, I mean, Jared Jack was there before Sean Livingston, and he was helping show Steph Curry how to step up in this league,
yeah,
and
yeah. I mean,
I'm sure he helped him a lot as a guard. I mean, Jared Jack's been doing this league for over a decade.
yeah, I mean that's another thing you bring up. That could be great for Dennis Schroeder. I mean, Schroeder, only 23 years old, just becoming a starting point guard, having a guy like Jack come in and help him, show him the ropes as a starter, as an NBA player. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at that point guard position that looks deep, and then you look at the big man situation for the Hawks. They also brought back Chris Humphries on a 1 year, $4 million deal, and I love that move too. I mean, I thought that he was probably gone after this year because he pretty much essentially replaced Tiago Splitter, who's still under contract for next year. But I'm so happy we brought back Chris.
oh yeah, I mean we talked about this, in our last podcast when we were talking about guys that we want back, and Chris Humphries, me and you both agreed we love him. He plays so hard. He's a big body that plays bigger than he is, and he can even play center. I mean, we saw him. He was one of the best rebounding big men for the Hawks in that Cleveland series. I mean, I love Chris Humphries. I love this signing. He's even got a better offensive game than I expected when he first came over, and I think that really, the depth that we have at the big man spot, especially with Tiago Splitter still under contract, that's the real question now. Like, are we going to keep Splitter heading into the season? He's coming off injury. He might not even be ready day one. He's still got value given his like contract, and it's only a year. So I think the Hawks could move him, but that's the question now. With Chris Humphries being brought back, what happens to Mike Muscala? What happens to Tiago Splitter? Because I think one of those guys has to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, already see them start to trim the fat. They waived Lamar Patterson, who's a guy I liked, but we just did not have room for on the roster anymore. We're just so deep on that wing after investing so heavily in the draft, and I don't think they're going to give up on Tavares because I just think there's so much intrigue there, and they brought him over a year early to ensure that they were going to get him on this roster. I think they're more committed to him. Muscala, they did guarantee his contract.
They didn't guarantee it.
No, I think he picked up his option for this year, but
He
I think
picked up. He picked up his
it's
option.
under $1 million. You know what I mean? If they want to release Moose, like they'll release him.
I mean, they picked him up, but his contract's not guaranteed.
Okay.
So we have his player option, but we can still cut him basically until
Yeah.
some point in July. But otherwise, that pretty much covers free agency. Moving on, the Hawks just got eliminated from the actual bracket play in Summer League. We still have one consolation game, but we saw a lot of big things, especially from the kind of big three of Summer League that we're kind of expecting to make this roster. Big Eddie Tavares, DeAndre Bembry, and Torian Prince, the 2 first-round picks from this year. I mean, I know you said you didn't get a chance to, watch a lot of this, but watch a ton of the Summer League action. But what do you think of those 3 guys heading into the season?
Well, I did get to watch some, not all. I watched a lot of highlights, and what I saw from DeAndre Bembry was that he just looked very well-rounded. I saw him doing a lot of everything, and I think once you get him around a lot more talent and you get him rolling in Coach Bud's system, which may take a minute, but going into year 2, I think this is already going to be a guy who Hawks fans are taking notice of, and I think he's definitely going to threaten Torian Prince for that starting small forward job in the future. But Prince looked impressive also. I mean, he also played a pretty well-rounded game. Looks good on defense. He had, I think against the Kings, he had that ridiculous game. I mean, I think his plus minus was like 27 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Tavares, to me, he has the size. I still think he lacks the physicality, but as I said, the Hawks did bring him over a year earlier to make sure that the European team didn't come at him with big money. So he wasn't really ready. He looks a lot better than he did last year. I think this is the year that the Hawks really need to start investing some minutes in him if they want to take him seriously as a prospect. I like Mike Muscala, but I just don't think he's getting any better. I think Moose is what he is. He's a hustle player. I love him, but at the end of the day, if you're going to keep Splitter, you're going to keep Humphreys. Mike Scott, his contract became guaranteed this past week. You have to get rid of one of those guys and make room for Tavares, and it has to happen.
Yeah, I think with Tavares' performance in Summer League, he definitely earned a full-time spot on this Hawks roster. I think he's going to start getting a bigger role this year. He was an absolute beast blocking shots. He was averaging easily over 3 a game in just about 20 minutes a game. He had 5 blocks in the last game against the Wizards. I think almost all of them came against Kelly Oubre. I mean, that's the thing about these 3 guys that I noticed. They are all so defensively sound. And you see Coach Budenholzer always preaching defense, this organization really putting an emphasis on defense over the last few years. And these 3 guys that they're going to be on the Hawks this year are all so good on defense. I mean, Bembry and Prince, both wiry, athletic guys who were just wreaking havoc on opponents in Summer League. I mean, it's obviously going to be a little different in the NBA, but these are guys that are going to be demons on the defensive end. And I think they're all pretty much ready to contribute in some, way this season.
Chase, this team is lacking a true superstar, but it is such a deep roster. It is so deep.
Oh, I mean, that's the one thing that made the Warriors great, that makes the Spurs great, is just depth. And this team has it this year. I mean, we need someone who can get buckets. We still need a guy.
Rudy Gay.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, Rudy Gay can score, whether you love him or not. I mean, I hate when people make these kind of judgments when a guy's playing out in like Sacramento that has 6 different coaches, and it just people say they play selfish and stuff like that, and it's like I guarantee you bring Rudy Gay into the Hawks system, into the way Coach Bud, he'll buy into Coach Bud. He'll buy into Coach Bud. He'll buy into the system. He'll score. He'd be our best scorer. I mean, right there. He'd be our best scorer.
The NBA is all about the right situation. Like you take a look at a guy like Boris Diaw, who did nothing in his whole entire career, and then goes to San Antonio and becomes a role player for a decade. I mean,
Yeah.
That's all the NBA is about. The perfect situation for you. That's why I believe in Dwight Howard. If Dwight Howard were re-signing with the Rockets this year, I'd say, yeah, he's probably not going to have a great year next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. That was a bad situation. And, Dwight Howard hasn't had a good situation, good coach since Orlando. And that's when he dominated. He has that here in Atlanta. And I'm expecting big things from him, without a doubt.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's move on to some Braves talk here. Catcher's becoming a huge question mark for this team. I don't know. Some of y'all may have missed this, but over the All-Star break, Tyler Flowers' MRI came back, and he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I think he has a broken hand. So that means A.J. Pierzynski is going to be the everyday catcher. And at this point, that's kind of a scary proposition.
Yeah.
MLB.com's Mark Bowman, however, thinks that the Braves might start looking into Jonathan Lucroy again. This is a guy who's on the Brewers. He's under contract this year. He has a team option for next year for only $5.3 million. Bowman points out that this move would only be good for the team if they think they get an extension done with the Brewers. But, I mean, with the Brewers probably trying to sell pieces and rebuild kind of like the Braves just did, I mean, if we can go into our depth of arms in the farm system and go get a guy like Lucroy, I would even take a risk on the year and a half. I just think he's a top 5 catcher in this league, and I think Atlanta's a place where he would strive. And you bring him in, you sign one more big bat this offseason, and then you have Swanson and Albies. I mean, you're looking at a different team next year. But I think that making one big move at the deadline is big for the Braves, speeding up this process a little bit, just a little bit.
I just think that a trade for Lucroy, I agree. I think it's a risk worth taking. I mean, unlike a lot, I mean, the Braves, they have some swag to them. They can get players to re-sign. I think Lucroy would be willing to stay in Atlanta. I think the rebuild with him, most of all, it gives the Braves kind of hope, going into next year. They have a few guys that are ready to win now. And then some of these young guys, if they start popping, it'll start working out. They definitely have the arms to make it happen. And I think getting Lucroy, I think it's definitely worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, you really look at the catcher's market anyways. There's still risk no matter what. I mean, you could go in with Tyler Flowers next year, who actually has been a decent starter for the Braves this year in his own right. But, this team is kind of set at many positions, like Albies and Swanson, they're not big power guys, Malik Smith, Ender, and Ciarte, they're not big power guys. So when you're looking to invest in a player at this point, power is what you're looking for. You got Wilson Ramos and Matt Wieters. Those are the only 2 guys that can really hit for, can really slug like Jonathan Lucroy can. And those guys are even bigger question marks to me. Ramos has put up such a great year that's just going to take big time money to snag him. And he's a guy who hit under the Mendoza line last year. I mean, he had 229 or something like that. So,
Yeah.
And then Matt Wieters can never stay healthy. So no matter what they do, there's going to be risk. But I think Jonathan Lucroy is the best out of that bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the best out of that bunch. And I think if they do find a way to get an extension with Lucroy, that's absolutely huge. Because, I mean, now you're looking at the catcher of the future, one of the best catchers in the league, especially from a hitting perspective, hitting 304 this year with like 11 home runs for an awful Brewers team. I just think that's exactly what this team needs. I mean, the future of the catcher position is one of the few places on this team that hasn't been answered yet. And a move to get Jonathan Lucroy, even now when you're still in the midst of a rebuild, I think is a good one.
Yeah, well, we saw last year when the Braves tried to go on a more experienced guy and Hector Oliveira to try to add some power to this lineup. We're potentially looking at getting him back in a couple weeks here. He actually started his rehab with the GCL Braves today. As we know, he got that lengthy suspension for the domestic abuse violence. And John Coppola's come out and talked about how he definitely has buyer's remorse. He's already publicly said it was a bad move. So because he's done that, I wouldn't be surprised they pulled the plug on Oliveira and said, we're letting you go. We don't want to have this organization held in this regard, whatever. But in my opinion, I think everybody deserves a second chance, and we still haven't gotten to see an extended look at one of the biggest investments we've made. And I think we have to at least use this last 2 months of the season as a trial run for him. I mean, if it doesn't work out, you can cut him in the offseason. But the Braves, nobody's even covering this team. I mean, some local people might not be thrilled about it, but this isn't making Sports Center if we give this guy a chance, you know. We're invested in him until 2022. I just think it'd be foolish just to cut the cord right now, especially after he hit somewhere around 400 in spring training this past year.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy that I was, really excited to see play this year. We got a little taste of him last year. He didn't do too well, but that was getting his feet wet point. Now we're going to get the first full season of him, and then it gets interrupted by all this crap. It's disappointing to see, and you understand if the Braves decide to just cut the cord, but I'm with you. I mean, it's obviously easy to say from a fan's perspective, like, no, we want to see him on the field, but I just think like there's not a lot of publicity around this team right now. If he goes out there and starts slugging bombs and hitting 300 for the team, like, how do you cut the cord on that when you're committed to him for the next 6 years or 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the few guys where you just look at his skill set and you say, this is a powerful guy, you know? I mean, you watch him hit batting practice, he's powerful. He really is.
Yeah.
I want to see him in the lineup. I want to see him play every day for the next 2 months when we get him back August 1st. But that also raises the question, had the deadline, do you trade Nick Markakis? If you want to see what Oliveira's got, you've got Malik Smith and NCRT out there, then you got to move Markakis and try to shed that salary while you still can so you can spend this offseason, I mean, that's $10 million right there annually. And I think there's a team out there, especially the way he's been heating up lately, that'll probably part ways with a mid-level prospect to try to take a chance on a guy like Markakis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Markakis has been one of our probably our outside of Freddie Freeman our most solid player over the last 2 years, and I think he's been the contract. If we were competing team, isn't really a bad one. I think it's a decent one, and I think there's going to be a team out there that needs another piece, and Markakis can still be helpful to an MLB team. So I definitely think the Braves will get some offers around the trade deadline, and I don't think he'll be here, past the trade deadline.
Well, in other Braves news, Shelby Miller is in the headlines, but all for the wrong reasons, Chase.
Yeah, I mean, now that trade looks like highway robbery.
Shelby Miller has been demoted to AAA by the Arizona Diamondbacks, in case you missed that.
Yeah, I mean, he was something else. By far our best pitcher last year. We get the number 1 overall pick, Dansby Swanson. Thank you, Arizona. We get Aaron Blair. And what else? We got a second-round pick. NCRT. I forgot about him. 3 huge pieces. Blair struggled, but we still got a lot to see from him. Swanson's been playing well, and NCRT's been playing well. They both look like 2 pieces to the future of our team. And it's sad to see Miller struggle like this. But I still think there's definite hope of him figuring things out.
Yeah, I think he'll figure it out. He's too talented a guy not to. We've seen him break down fundamentally like this, and pitching is so volatile. You just never know, and that's a big reason why the Braves have invested in so many arms. You know what I mean? Like, arms are no guarantee long term.
Yeah, I mean, you see guys that dominate the league for 3 years and then fall off the map. I mean, just look at how far guys like the best pitchers in the game. I mean, Justin Verlander. 1 year he's striking out 20 guys a game, and the next year he has a 6 ERA. So, pitching in the major leagues is hard, and I think, like you said, Miller's so talented. Watching him pitch was so fun. It's hard for me to believe that a guy like that can go through this big of a struggle at this point in his career. But hopefully he gets things for his sakes worked out.
Yeah, well, the other young Braves ace, Julio Teheran, John Coppolella came out and publicly said about him in an AJC interview with Mark Rowley that we're not trading Julio. So y'all can stop all the Julio to Boston comments with Pomeranz going there. And look, the Braves aren't moving Tayron. Unless it's a life-changing offer, they're not moving Tayron. They're not moving Freeman. At the end of the day, they blew this thing up, and they kept the two pieces that were great for this team long term. And it was those two guys. And I'm all for holding on to both of them. And I'm happy that Coffee came out and said that about Tayron last week.
Well, let's talk about Tayron for a second. I mean, I wasn't sure that Tayron had this kind of year in him. I mean, I always knew he had so much talent, and he always showed flashes of it. But then there was always kind of an inconsistent, stretch or year or something. But I mean, he has really dominated this year, and he's been the one guy that you can. It's fun to look forward to watch the game when Tayron's on the mound.
Chase, that's why a lot of people were down Tayron because, he did have a little bit of a down year last year, but I still saw those glimpses of brilliance at home. I mean, he was just terrific. And you got to realize he's only like a year or two older than like all these prospects we're bringing in. And this guy's been doing it in the big leagues for half a decade already. I mean, he's made 2 All-Star teams. He's only 25 years old. There's still a lot of room for improvement there. And I don't care. Like, everybody's saying, oh, he's not a number 1. He's not a number 2. I mean, y'all are fools. I think he's easily a top 10 pitcher in the National League. Maybe a top 5. If not, it's borderline. He's great. I think he can get better. He's on a team-friendly contract. There's absolutely no reason to move him. Absolutely not. He's exactly what the Braves need to build around.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, him and Freddie are who the organization decided to build around, and like I'm just really happy to see Tayron perform like this. He definitely looks like the guy who could anchor this rotation for years to come.
He looked good in the All-Star game the other day too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been terrific all year for everybody.
Well, let's finish out with some Falcons talk here, Chase. Not too much in the headlines as far as they're concerned, but Roddy White did come out and make some comments last week regarding Kyle Shanahan, the whole falling out with the Falcons, and I thought that was worth mentioning. You want to delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he just kind of said, it was just miserable. I mean, I think we all kind of knew it, and White was such a professional about it. He didn't really talk about it. I mean, the one thing, it was kind of disappointing to see them having those frustrations when the team was like 6-1 or 5-0. But he kept it under wraps for the most part all season. And he said he met with Shanahan, tried to get an understanding, and it just didn't work. And I mean, we saw it throughout the whole year last season that Matt Ryan was clearly trying to force the ball to Julio Jones. And that has kind of been, the mantra for Kyle Shanahan's offense, like get it to that number 1 receiver, force it to him. And we saw that result in like a career high for interceptions for Matt Ryan last year. So, hopefully I think it's going to be better in year 2. They have Mohamed Sanu now. I mean, let's be honest. Roddy White was a declining receiver either way. I mean, the numbers dropped off in part because he was less involved. But there's a point at the NFL where you're just not as good as you once were. And I think has just as much to do with it as him not being as involved.
Yeah, it's a double-sided argument for sure. I think it was just time. It was just time. He had a great career with the Falcons, and I don't think he should ever suit up in another uniform. I think he's had a great go at it, but it's just time.
Yeah, I agree with you. But the Falcons have training camp coming up this week. We're going to be talking about that on our next podcast. So tune in for that. I don't know.
Yeah. Another podcast coming at you next Friday. That's all we really got for this week. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great weekend. Go Hawks, go Braves, go Falcons. Dude, we're the shit. All right, bro. I'll edit this shit up. I'll get it. I wonder how long was that, you think?
Not edited. It was probably like an hour.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't too long.
All right, dope. Well, I gotta go talk to my mom real quick. I might be going to lunch or something, but if not, then I'm gonna go and chop this up now. So
All right, you're good, dude.
I'll get it up today though.
All right, see you.
All right, bud. Good shit.